So, in reflecting on Heidegger, when when I say the malaise of modernity, I kind of like refer to like the situation that we find ourselves in. Like, what does it mean to be a being, to be like a sentient, conscious individual in the 21st century world? It involves like many assumptions that we don't recognize as assumptions, because one of the things that like any culture, not just American culture or Islamic culture or Chinese culture, like what our cultures do, instead of merely like kind of like shaping us to become who we are, whether like I would say that kind of like unraveling my philosophy, like which has like a distinct ontology, a distinct metaphysics, a distinct epistemological like framework. Even like I have some things to say about logic and even kind of like mathematical induction, but when we talk about kind of like what is the point of philosophy, what is the point of philosopher existing, like what is a philosopher and why would anyone want to be a philosopher, like what those are the questions that like are at the heart of like of my philosophy. And when we understand ourselves, um like until this was like one a point that I didn't really appreciate until I read it was Ansari's Destiny Disrupted, which like was a narrative of world history told from like an Islamic perspective, because like we as Westerners, as Americans, whether we consider ourselves Westerners, like we are we are the heirs to a particular like narrative of history. um but that's not the case everywhere around the world. Like if you were to talk to someone who is alive right now in like Saudi Arabia or in Egypt, like they're like when you orient yourself in time, it would be a very different. We would talk about like the Prophet Muhammad born in 570 and his like his revelations and the kind of strife that that created with the status quo, like his fleeing to Mecca. Why that is like it's a timeline. Like and what Ansari kind of like made me clear is like there like we think of ourselves like as like a global culture. There are like there are Chinese there are Chinese like there are like Saudi Arabians, and we think of our world as kind of like being defined by these like political national like constructs that are the outgrowth of the Enlightenment and the outgrowth of the rise of nationalism in the 19th century. But like the question of like what does it mean to exist right now, what is this moment that we're living through in history? What you have to like realize is like the nature of like time is not like what we like perceive it, in the sense of it having in a beginning, a middle, and then what you have to realize is like there exists like timelines where like the 4-year old version of you is just as like existing in this moment right now as like your present self, as much as like the 70-year old self, or however old you happen to like live to. Those states like exist like simultaneously. From the perspective of like someone 500 years from the future, I'm someone who is dead, who to them has always been dead and has always been just a dead figure. From the perspective of someone in the past, I'm someone who has not yet arrived. And from the perspective of the present, I am now. I exist. What does it mean to exist now? And like what defines our moment is that we are at like a conjuncture of intersecting timelines, of kind of defining like ourselves and our purpose as like a species. Like what is the point of the fact that we exist? Like we can disagree on like the facts of history, but like what is the point of us existing now? And it's not like such a straightforward question. Like for much of history, like religions told you like what was true. Like why, like, ask yourself this question: why did ancient people build pyramids? Just ask your, like, we can, like, the historian will tell you one thing, the anthropologist will focus on like beliefs in X god or Y goddess, but like the question, the answer is like, it is more rooted in like a deeper question, like what else would they be doing? And that is like what makes Homo sapiens unique, like what makes humans unique in the animal kingdom. Like we've like there's been like theories posited from like Aristotle to like the present, and we talk about tools, about consciousness, about language, but like every single like quality that we ascribe to be uniquely human, we know has like have like definite correlates somewhere else in the animal kingdom, from octopus to magpie birds, which we have reason to believe are conscious. But what makes Homo sapiens unique is we alone are aware of the inevitability of our mortality. No matter what you do, whether you become a saint or Satan himself, you will die. No matter like what you there's one beginning and there's one end, and you have no control over that. And we as humans struggle like to wrap ourselves around like that concept, like to perceive ourselves as existing and to want to live and to have these connections to other people, and just to know that ultimately that we are doomed, that it is all fleeting, and and it will settle into ephemerality. It's just something that like morphs the head, and it, it when what who are we? And my answer to that question is we are becoming like, you think that we think of ourselves as these beings in time, these beings in space, but like to be a being is to have a definitive quality. Like you could, whether you think of yourself like as like you being a unique genetic like iteration of the human species that could be represented in terms of information, in terms of binary code, like every epigenetic uh permutation that created who you are right now could be represented as data, as a series of ones or zeros. But is that really you? Is that really this being that like feels things and has fears? Like what does it mean to exist? And for to be human has been to be defined by this knowledge of the inevitability of our mortality. And we are at a juncture where soon that's not the case. Like we think of death as being an inevitable part of life, just as it exists because it's a tragic part of life. But death is a biological series of processes, as deals that like results from the beginning of senescence to the death of an organism. It 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 like death is what defines our lives. But as Neil Schusterman in his Scythe trilogy shows, death isn't like bad or good. Like, but like imagine this not so like strange future world, as like Schusterman writes in his books, where humanity has like completely conquered death through biotechnology. What is the point of you existing, of you living? What is the point of you existing forever, other than you are scared to not exist? And so, what is the point of existence? And that is what we are struggling with as a species to live through. Whether humanity lives or dies, like, only time will tell.